Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is MrHurriicane, and again today I'm talking about Madden 17, and now every rating in the game has been revealed. Down below in the description there is a link to the player rating database from EA Sports, and from there you can find all of the ratings for your favorite players or your favorite team, and check out what they are to start out in Madden 17. Now, I'm going to be actually talking about quite a few things in this video. I have some ratings I wanted to share. I do want to talk about some franchise teams that I am suggesting for those looking for a team to use this year. I won't talk about what team I'm using yet, although looking at these ratings does pretty much cement who I will be selecting, but I won't be sharing until probably the game is out. But first I wanted to talk about just how the overall rating has changed this year, and this gets a lot of attention. I made all those top 5 players videos showing out the top 5 players in the game. We've noticed the overall scale changing, and then once everybody gets their hands on the full ratings, of course, then there are a lot of opinions about players being too high or players being too low. And what I wanted to first say is that the overall scale has changed, and I do think the thresholds for certain ratings have definitely changed. For instance, pass and run block and zone and man coverage are some that are definitely tuned this year, it seems, across the board. But when you're looking at whether a player you think is too high or too low, look more at the individual ratings and see if it's the overall scale you have a problem with and not the individual ratings. What we've seen a lot with these ratings is the separation between the elite players at one position and then everybody else. Like, we have very high rated corners still, although it doesn't go higher than 94, but then you have very good corners that can stretch all the way from the high 80s to the low 80s and even into the 70s. The scale has changed in a way to where you shouldn't look at 80 the way you did in years past. An 80 overall player, well, that's what Xavier Rhodes is. An 82, that's what Marcus Peters is. Both are very capable starting cornerbacks. So first, know that the overall scale is different, and it separates the elite players from the non-elite players, and I do like that aspect of it. And I want there to be a very noticeable difference between those players on the field. But when it comes to looking at these ratings, first realize the overall scale is different, then ignore overall. You want to pay more attention to these players' strengths and at specific skills where they are supposed to be excelling. Many players are on their teams at their positions to fit a certain role. They don't necessarily have to do everything well, but they do need to excel in a few areas. And that doesn't translate into a good overall all the time. Overall rating in Madden and sports games in general takes everything into account, all of the important ratings. These overall ratings end up favoring the more complete players who have the most strengths and are the best at those strengths. And it's not wrong to rate those guys as high as they are. Like, look at the players on the list right now. Those are the best players at their respective positions. But with that being said, you can still be a very good player, but not be good at everything and thus have a lower overall, but still be just as good as other players at certain aspects of the game. Too many things go into determining a player's overall to make comparisons, especially when the overalls are similar. Overall rating looks at players through the lens of, here is everything your position is asked to do, even if you're not asked to do it, but we're going to grade you on it. And it's going to determine your average here, or what ends up being your overall rating. Whereas, when you're actually playing the game, you're going to say, okay, I want this player to do this job. So right now we're looking at the quarterbacks here in the low 80s and high 70s. I want to focus on Blake Bortles and Teddy Bridgewater. And Blake Bortles has one higher overall, and he is higher than Teddy Bridgewater. But I would say for the type of offense that I would be playing personally, I would rather use Teddy Bridgewater because he has more short accuracy by 2 more medium accuracy, he has 4 more speed, he has more acceleration, more agility, so he's going to be better on the play actions. And for what I would ask my quarterback to do, Teddy's better. That's because I'm looking at it through a lens that overall rating does not. On the flip side, Blake Bortles, if you want a quarterback that throws deep more, he has 3 more throw power, 3 more deep accuracy. His other accuracy ratings aren't that far away from Teddy's, so in another offense, Bortles might actually be the better quarterback. and that depends on the lens you look through. We just see a lot of discussion about the overall rating of players whenever these are revealed. My issue isn't so much with overall rating, but more how it tends to be used, and just because one player is rated lower doesn't necessarily mean he's worse, especially when he's asked to do things that fit within his skill set. Overall rating is sometimes useful for comparisons, especially when the overall gap is wide, but in every situation, it's more reliable to look at the ratings that make the overall rating. When I do my franchises, I'm always looking at the individual ratings that help define the role I want that player to have, and I have a few different ratings to look at for every position depending on what they will be asked to do in most situations. I think overall rating does a pretty good job of ballparking talent. Like, we have an idea of what a low 80 is, but I think once you look at like 80, 81, 79, then you have to look a lot deeper at the ratings to figure out what's different between those players. So, that's enough of that. Let's move on. I want to talk about some teams that I would suggest for franchise this year, now that I can see all the ratings, and who has the potential for growth, yet has some fun to begin with. And players want to play franchise for a variety of reasons. I think the most common one is just playing as your favorite team, and that's how I got into franchise mode when I was young. When I was 8 years old, I remember playing as the Vikings. I would also control the Rams, and give the Vikings Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk, and play on rookie. Things have definitely changed since then, but I've identified a handful of teams here that you could use for a variety of reasons. This is something I'm asked quite often. Players want a recommendation for who they should control as in a franchise, and the first thing you gotta think about is, what do you like about franchise? Is it drafting? Is it developing players? Is it just using a team that's already good? I mean, there are so many different ways to play franchise and just ways to start out. And there are a lot of good teams to actually play with franchise in this year for different reasons. So, I've started off here with the Dallas Cowboys, and I've identified them because of their great offense. You don't have to worry about the offensive line. I'm guessing that defensive line will be much more powerful this year and tougher to defend. So you get the best offensive line in the league alongside Tony Romo, Dez Bryant, Ezekiel Elliott. So you'll likely be scoring a lot of points as you're trying to build up that defense. They could use some more work at cornerback outside of Orlando Scandrick. Then you have to worry about the age of Tony Romo, the age of Jason Witten. They're just a team that if you want to start out with a good offense, perfect choice. Now let's move on to the Miami Dolphins. They have some standout talent on defense there at the top, but they could also use some development with their receiving core. They have to find a long-term running back solution, and Ryan Tannehill could use some more development as well. I think they have a nice blend of some fun players to begin with if you like those defensive standouts. They also could use some help with drafting and developing. Next, we have my favorite team, the Minnesota Vikings, and this is solely if you just want to grow the existing roster and develop those players. The Vikings are very young. They've done a very good job drafting. At some point, you may have to replace Adrian Peterson due to age, but overall, this is a very young team, and most of your job here will be to develop the existing roster and make smart decisions along the way with who you keep and who you let go, because you likely can't keep everybody, so you have to identify the most important pieces and draft along the way so you have players ready to step in case very good starters leave to other teams. Next, we have the Buffalo Bills. I think it would be a lot of fun to develop this offense with Tyrod Taylor and Sammy Watkins alongside LaShawn McCoy. They still need some more help at wide receiver, but they have pieces that are fun to use on offense. You could have a very creative scheme if you wanted to. They also have good defensive talent, but both sides of the ball do need some work, and of course in the AFC East, you're always chasing the Patriots until further notice. Next, I have the Chicago Bears. And they're in a tough division against the Packers and the Vikings. The Lions have talent as well on that team, and the Bears don't have a lot of players in the 80s and 90s. They're stacked at linebacker. They spent a lot of money on free agency the past 2 years at that spot. They're still not done improving that defense, but also on offense they have work to do outside of Alshon Jeffrey. You will get Kevin White, whose ratings will be a little bit lower as he did not get to play last year. You'd get two of my favorite players to watch ahead of their draft classes with Kyle Fuller and Jeremy Langford. You get the fastest safety, Adrian Amos, and the fastest punter, and Pat O'Donnell. And then that takes us to the final team I wanted to talk about today, and there are many good options beyond the 6 I'm talking about here in this video, but I wanted to bring up the Atlanta Falcons. You might not think about them at first because they have Julio Jones and Matt Ryan, Devontae Freeman. They also have Desmond Trufant, but they have a lot of room for you to draft more impact talent while you get to use Julio Jones and have Desmond Trufant help you on defense. I just think there's a lot of work to do with improving this roster while you do get a few really fun players to use. Julio on offense, Devontae Freeman as well. Then defensively you build around Desmond Trufant and Vic Beasley. You do this while competing with the tough NFC South and that Carolina Panthers team that is pretty scary in this game. To close out this video, I just want to look at a few different rating categories that I was looking at and I was tweeting about, just sharing different ratings and who is the best in certain categories. I know this is one that people love to look at. It is the fastest players in the game. It's at every position, and the fastest are all at 96 there. We have Brandon Cooks and Philip Dorsett, J.J. Nelson, and then you have Jakeem Grant and Corey Grant as well. Tavon Austin at 95. Next up, we're going to look at hit power, and these are the hardest hitting players in the game, and I was surprised to not see Harrison Smith even visible on this list, but he was just underneath here at 92 hit power. We have Cam Chancellor leading the way at 97, Calvin Pryor is 95. A lot of linebackers always have good hit power, but I tend to look at the safeties. And we have rookie Keanu Neal, another player you could use with the Atlanta Falcons, who has 93 hit power with 87 speed. How about trucking for running backs? LeGarrette Blount leads the way, 96. Adrian Peterson and Matt Asiata are in the top 4. And Derrick Henry, I think he's going to be very good in this game with his 89 trucking. He also has 88 speed, and I think he'll move well enough for you to not just rely solely on power. You're going to want to use that most of the time, especially with the tight ends on this roster. We'll get there in a moment, but I think Derrick Henry is going to be really good when you use him. I know awareness is lower, probably ball carry vision is going to be lower than others, but when he's in your control, I think Derrick Henry is going to be really good in this game. Here's an obscure one I was looking at. Short accuracy for halfbacks. And there is Keenan Reynolds there at the top. Denard Robinson not far behind. Jerick McKinnon played some option quarterback at Georgia Southern, so he has a 48. But I think the halfback pass might be adequate for maybe the top 2 of these guys. Next up, we have the wide receiver short accuracy, and Braxton Miller leads this list. You guys know I like fast linebackers. Ryan Shazier is the fastest with 90 speed, and he's the only linebacker in the 90s. And Anthony Barr, by the way, that 88 speed is combined with 85 zone coverage, so that's going to be fun. Hope to get him in Ultimate Team. His version in Madden 16 didn't have the greatest coverage, so I usually use him as a pass rusher, but now he's much more versatile in the game. The Vikings have the fastest defensive lineman with Danielle Hunter at 87. And I think in franchise, this guy is going to be amazing. He has very good block shedding, and he can rush the passer as well at only 21 years old. So I'm guessing that he's going to be developing really fast in franchise and be very good for a long time being that young. I like fast defensive players, but I also want them to be able to cover. And the Panthers have the 2 best zone coverage linebackers in the game with Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis, 89 and 88. They also have 3 of the top 8 linebackers in man coverage as Shaq Thompson gets into the mix. If you want coverage linebackers like I do, and I did a couple years ago when I used the Panthers as a franchise team, well, there you go. And Anthony Barr is there, 73 man coverage, so he is one of the best coverage linebackers, a pass rush option, and can run and chase the halfback as well. I did not look at this, but I'm guessing his running back ratings aren't bad either. Here are the best safeties in man coverage. Of course, Tyrann Mathieu here kind of breaks the scale, being a cornerback and a safety. So it's 96 for him, and then 81 and lower for everybody else. One player I like a lot on here is Byron Jones with his 80-man coverage. And I think with some development in franchise, he could become one of the best safeties in the league. One thing I always focus on with tight ends is their run blocking, because I like to use a lot of twin tight end sets, but have the option to throw and run from them successfully, and you're probably best doing that with the Tennessee Titans, who have 3 of the top 4 run blocking tight ends. So clearly they care a lot about that, and they have one of the best receiving tight ends in that mix as well with Delanie Walker. As a lot of the information has talked about, I do expect that the pass rush to be more fierce this year, and for your running back pass protection to be more important than ever in Madden. So here are the top pass protecting halfbacks. Jaquiz Rodgers is the best, and nobody is above a 76. Le'Veon Bell is on there with 75. You have rookie Ezekiel Elliott with 73. And those are all the ratings I had to share right now, but the database, again, is linked down below in the description if you want to go look at what receivers have the best route running or what halfbacks have the best hands. There are so many different things you can look at. I was having a lot of fun with it, and we'll probably still mess around looking at different things in there. So, let me know what you thought of this video down below in the comments section, everybody. Thank you all for watching, and please leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more Madden 17 discussion before the game is out, and then content when the game is actually out. And I can't wait to get my hands on it, and to bring you guys some content, and to reveal who my franchise team is going to be, but that's not going to be for a few weeks yet. So that's going to do it for today, everybody. Thank you again, and have a great day.